The Cubs take Game 2 in Philadelphia, heading for a rubber match on Wednesday. Ian Happ with a 2-homer game. And we're also going to talk some catch probability today on the Cubs Daily Podcast. Big series for Ian Happ, 2 homers on Tuesday from the left side of the plate. He had 1 home run on Monday from the right side of the plate. 2 pretty big home runs today as well. 3rd inning homer, he had tied the game at 2. This was a curveball hung up in the zone from Mick Abel, the rookie pitcher they were facing. And then Happ in the 6th inning hits a 2-run home run to go ahead by 1 on a cutter in off the plate from reliever Taijuan Walker. Really impressive swing here. I encourage you to hop over to Marquee's social accounts and check out the video of this swing. Happ's been having a relatively good season. I don't necessarily think the public believes that is the case, primarily because the slug has been down, but he's still above a league average hitter even with that slug being down because of how often he gets on base. That is one of his carrying tools, so to speak. And now he's hit 3 home runs over the last 24 hours or so, and his slug is all of a sudden right back around 400, just under the 430, 440 mark he usually is on a season-to-season basis. And he's right on pace once again now for 20 home runs or more for the 3rd consecutive season. And there's been a lot of chatter for PCA to be the leadoff hitter of late. I saw this from Mark DeRosa. He had a take on it on MLB Network. I've heard it on 670 The Score as well, locally in Chicago. I just don't see it. I always talk about Cole Wright with this in studios here. But with PCA's swing miss, the lack of OBP, I know he has the ability to create some chaos, steal bases, etc. He's a fun leadoff hitter. I want him with more ABs, but with how much of a threat he's become from a slug standpoint, I actually think he fits beautifully kind of in that 4, 5, 6 area in the order, depending on who is in for that particular game. And let him continue to slug, let him continue to wreak havoc on the bases. I don't necessarily think the value of Pete's chaos outweighs that of which Happ gets on base more frequently. So he's the on-base machine. If Happ locks back in the slug, as it seems like he's done in these last couple days, I think it's going to be even harder to make the case for PCA to hop into the leadoff spot. Don't adjust him. He looks great. PCA looks good. I don't think he needs to lead off, even though I get it. He has been pretty good in that spot this season. I just think Happ makes a lot of sense in the way that Council likes to construct lineups. We'll see if Pete can tone down the strikeout rate and make more of a case. This is something I imagine I will bring up on future episodes of the Cubs Daily Podcast. Colin Ray goes 4 1/3, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts. Thought it was an okay start. He gave up some hits, struggled a bit in the 5th inning there, as he tends to do when he turns over lineups for the 3rd time. He's unfortunately my call right now to go to the pen when Shota returns, and it sounds like Shota threw the other day, or through today, This is Tuesday in Arizona, and then he'll throw again on Sunday. Council mentioning pregame that the recovery between outings like this is the big thing for them to watch, so we'll see some updates. Hopefully he looks good Sunday, maybe one more after that, and then I imagine he joins the team for the road trip in St. Louis and Houston. 2 pretty big series, the first games for the Cardinals, against the Cardinals, that would be on the 23rd of June. So a couple weeks away from getting the ace of this rotation back. For the bulk of today's podcast, what I want to do is talk about catch probability, something you see all the time on social media. Well, I've always thought that individual catch probabilities, like on a given play, were kind of full of error. They always seemed odd to me on an individual basis. But despite that, the aggregated lists we look at, so like an outs above average leaderboard or defensive runs saved, particularly for outfielders, was a pretty good encapsulation of who the best outfield defenders were in baseball, regardless of whether you look on a month or 2-month or end of year basis. And I gotta say, I'm somewhat vindicated by this. I recently learned that yes, there is in fact some error in this statistic, especially in balls between the 10 to 50% catch probability window. What's happened is basically StatCast is modeling the play based off the position of the fielder at the time the pitch is thrown and where the end point of the ball is, and then determining how long that fielder has to travel and how many feet they need to cover it in, and then modeling the probability they actually get to that ball. So StatCast has a number, and then historically we've reflected on this number, or at least some other individuals in the public space here have. There's a PhD candidate at Arizona State University named Vivian Pelletier who does some really good public research, and she got some validation from one of the research architects, data StatCast architects over there at MLB named Tom Tango. And what we've seen particularly is that on those sub 50% catch probability balls, there's an underestimation of the difficulty of that play. So basically, these balls should have been caught less often than they actually are represented by the StatCast numbers. So the StatCast numbers are too high. But the kind of odd thing here is that it doesn't have a massive effect overall on defensive grade. So when you sum up all of these errors, because of the infrequency that we see sub 50% catch probability balls, it doesn't really have that dramatic of an impact. So what I want to do is throw to a pregame segment of ours on this very topic. It's myself, Cliff, and Cole. Now, this is partially visual, so I encourage you to check out the segment which I posted on my X account, but I thought this discussion was still valuable and some of the back and forth was pretty good. So I wanted to play the audio here, and I hope that I kind of prepped you based off everything I just said. I tried to recap it to some extent without the visuals I was using in the segment. So I'm going to pick it up right here as Cole, Cliff, and I keep talking on whether catch probability is even something we should look at on an individual play basis. Let's take a listen.
So I understand these are small adjustments, but a lot of the time what ends up happening is that in the aggregate, we look on social media and you see all these plays that are 50%, 60%, something along those lines. We now know we have to adjust those down slightly. The funny thing in all this, though, I just rambled for 2 minutes here on this. When you aggregate all this data up, okay, it has very little impact. This error has very little impact on what we're looking at right here, which is a leaderboard. This passes in the industry we call a sniff test, right? These are all some of the best center field defenders in baseball. Pete Armstrong, #1. We see it every single night here. Victor Scott's amazing. Tatis' transition to the outfield has been really strong. Yeah. The reason is because in the aggregate, the big thing here is that the best defenders make their bread on those balls that are high probability. And the worst defenders, we're going to see Nick Castellanos tonight, grades at one of the worst ones historically. Just pull up the numbers here, right? Yeah. He's one that misses a lot of high probability balls. So the problem with this is, although we have this error in this window around 50%, we don't see a lot of those balls. So when you aggregate this all together and you see Pete's made about 190 plays this year, he's made about 5 to 10 plays in that 50% window. So even if all those are completely wrong, you take them out, you throw them away, Pete's still one of the best defenders in baseball. So it's a weird thing where we're overexposed to the catch probabilities that are incorrect, but when you sum it all up and look back, it actually doesn't impact defender value that much.
You know what? I'm punting catch.
Get out of here, catch probability. Are some of these numbers skewed because you can't necessarily pinpoint a player and their anticipatory skills?
Yeah, the angle here, it's probably the more complex part, is like understanding the skill element, especially when you factor in the wall and some of these other elements. The catch that we show with Pete there, where he's like running as fast as he possibly can to get to the ball, that doesn't look that crazy, but it's really low probability because he's crazy fast, gets an amazing jump, whereas you might see other guys who are slower diving to balls. They might make what look like more spectacular catches that actually aren't, because they're making up and having to dive where Pete doesn't have to dive.
And are some of those numbers for Fernando Tatis Jr., are they skewed just a little bit? I don't know if you remember, there was a play, ball hit to right field that looked as if, okay, this should be a knock, grab some outfield grass, and then all of a sudden running into the camera shot, Fernando Tatis Jr., next thing you know, he's in the dugout. He makes plays like that because he covers ground better than a whole lot of other outfielders.
Yeah, it's a great point. And again, I think I'll emphasize here is like the guys make their bread on those high probability plays. So for the most part, like Pete is an absolute 100% on every single ball that's like 90% or above. We only get so many of these in the 10 to 50% window. And I'll emphasize again, we're way overexposed to those plays on social media. You go and look online and look at any of these catches, it's like 50%. No way, that's unbelievable. No one's ever thrown up the 80% or 85%, although that Denzel Clark one, again, completely different situation. If a guy goes over the wall to rob a ball,
that's a 1% catch probability.
You're not allowed to look at the catch probability. You're not allowed to look at it.
It doesn't make sense to me. That's why I've been real quiet. I don't understand. Like, when I'm just catch the ball.
Or don't catch it, and then maybe you can get an obstruction called, like we saw.
You know what I mean?
Okay, loopholes. It's all about the loopholes. And just looking at that grid of numbers, I think there's a report card in my parents' mailbox that has an F all around it. Lance.
Just you saw the blue, though.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all that matters.
So now you see catch probability in the wild, and if it's under 50% or so, you have to haircut it a bit. I just think it helps us understand exactly how difficult some of these plays that guys are making. And because Pete Armstrong is a very good player and tends to have a shot at some of these plays, I do feel like this is a relevant topic to the Cubs. Tomorrow we got a day game, a noon start Central Time, an earlier game for us on the Central Time Midwest here. Ben Brown versus Jesus Luzardo. The latter there, Luzardo has allowed 20 earned runs in his last 5 2/3 innings. That is absolutely crazy. Gotta be tipping, gotta be some kind of mechanical issue going on here. So this feels like one of those spots where you kind of expect another 8 earned from Luzardo. And I don't know. I also have that feeling in the back of my head that he just fixed everything in his most recent pens or so with Caleb Cotham, the pitching coach there, and he will look as good as he did earlier in the season against the Cubs when he dominated us. Andy Martinez will have it for you guys on the recap tomorrow on the Cubs Daily Podcast. Take care.